Hi, I'm Justin Fuselier. I'm a rancher in Eunice, Louisiana. I finished school in 2003 in horticulture, and I wanted to move back home, and the easiest thing to do was to start a landscaping business. And so we started a nursery. We named it Coastal Prairie Nursery, and with hopes of growing natives. And we've transitioned more to that over the years, using it for landscaping and for restoration work. We do the cow-calf operation, grass-fed beef production, and we do crawfish on some of the same land. So the whole thing started with us. We had some tenant farmers that dissolved their business. So all of a sudden we had a bunch of pasture available to us. Dad being a farmer, we both had pretty conventional backgrounds in agriculture. Our first thought was just to get commercial cattle and put them in the pasture. But we had way more pasture than we did cattle. So Dad realized that land it couldn't just sit there and not draw any income, so he started doing some guided bird hunts.
I'm Vernon Fuselier, and I'm a retired rancher. I'd started a hunting preserve on the farm just for diversification of income. We started doing quail and pheasant hunts mainly.
He got interested in developing a more natural landscape for the hunting presentation. So we began speaking to some local professors that were doing the prairie restoration.
Dr. Malcolm Vidrine, he started telling me about prairie and that this was all prairie land. There was very few trees here. He said it was just huge prairie lands. The only trees you would have would maybe be along the bayous or rivers. And it really got my curiosity up. I just, what did that look like?
Look around you. This used to be a 2.5 million acre prairie. Hello, I'm Malcolm Vidrine. I'm a retired professor of biology from Louisiana State University at Eunice. 1996, 25 years ago, I said I'm going to restore a prairie in my front yard, an 1.5 acre prairie.
The South Central Louisiana, basically from like Ville Platte to Lake Charles to the marsh. The Mississippi Delta had 5 known transitions, named deltas that kind of just created a large alluvial floodplain through this area, and that's mostly what I guess developed in the prairie. Malcolm and a few other professors had went along remnant tracks along old railroad tracks and sourced the local ecotypes of seed, the last remaining stands, and developed a plot on his property and in Eunice at a restoration site. And from those plots, a lot of seed was taken to start other restorations.
Vernon used to drive by and wondering what the heck are these guys doing. And one day he stopped by and he asked me, "You think quail like these plants, would like them?" I said, "Quail are prairie chickens. This is their habitat."
And so he allowed me to go pick seeds. So I started picking seeds on Sunday afternoon when the Saints were losing. Even if I picked all summer and into the fall, I may have enough just to plant an acre or two. So I just kept doing that. Of course, the more I did it, the more I'd start reading about it. And we start looking at, regenerative agriculture and how to keep land's vital, and that's really what led to all of this, and it changed the whole way that we farm and think of farming or ranching now.
The unique thing about this model that Vernon and Justin are doing is that they've taken an agricultural plan, growing cattle, and they've superimposed that onto an ecological plan, restoring prairie.
After we stopped doing the hunting preserve, we started grazing it because the land needed to produce some kind of income.
Prairie grass is a good system to use in cattle ranching because one, it's native to our area, and so it requires no inputs as far as chemical, fertilizers and pesticides and things like that to grow it. It's native, so it will, once established, it will persist on its own. A lot of it is a high value graze. It has higher protein levels and just has actually coveted by the grazing animals, you know. And once they learn how to graze it, they will go for it. Learning how to manage this grass is what led us to discovering the sustainable grazing systems and how to allow the pulse and rest periods to support the grasses. Most of the commercial cattle we started with were big frame cattle, because that's what was available. Upon learning about cattle that were suited more for grass production and finishing, we began to learn that the cattle that did that were smaller bodied.
You need a cow that will have a high intake and not too big a body type, because it takes more nutrition to sustain that big body.
So we made an effort, I guess about 7 years ago, to switch up our genetics and go towards a cow breed that would be more suited for grass production systems.
It's a large risk, because you're taking land that had been producing financial reward through modern agriculture, and you're placing it into a new type of agriculture, one that is soil creating and producing a product that's actually highly priced nowadays, grass-fed beef. But this is even better than grass-fed beef. This is beef that's been fed through their entire lifetime on native grasses and wildflowers, see?
Again, our whole paradigm has shifted, but really we want a farm that's supported by sunlight and grass, not gas, I guess.
Vernon has one of the largest restored areas anywhere around.
They tell great stories about that. They said this prairie land was some of the last to be explored, because the grass was so tall, they would get lost in it. And you had no trees, anything for reference.
If you were to dig here, you would start to see these magnificent root systems. And the older a prairie gets, the more dynamic the root system is.
It's good to have that diversity. I think that's important in nature.
So if you just have one kind of plant, you have a very limited numbers of kinds of bacteria and fungi. But if you have 100 different kinds of plants, you've got a tremendous variety of bacteria and fungi. And this creates an underground habitat, because the real prairie is not what you see above ground. The real prairie is underground. It's like an upside down forest.
Also, the plants complement each other. One plant can produce something that the other plant can use. It may not be like the baptisia. We haven't seen cows eat baptisia, but it's a nitrogen producing plant. Even though they don't eat it, they may be helping the plants that the cows do eat.
What this type of agriculture does is that it actually takes what was farmland and it's bringing it back with the diversity. It's producing an agricultural product, recreating soils, and not just soil, but soil that has vitality.
So by having these grasses on the farm, it helps to again, just support that natural ecosystem. And it brings in a diversity of all species, you know, and that just builds resiliency and health for the land and everybody. It's really been rewarding to watch this whole system and the whole mindset change on this farm to this regenerative agriculture. If you're going to produce something and take animals' welfare into your hands, it's very fair to the animal. It's an enjoyable life if this is your cup of tea, you know, to get out there and work with them on a daily basis, because it does require that, getting out on a daily basis.
We made so many mistakes. You know, it looks like after all this time, we just now maybe starting to get on track.
We've been able to turn a profit after, you know, a lot of years of shifting genetics and a lot of steep learning curve, I should say. We definitely paid for our education one way or another.
But I think he's leading the way. I think he's the most forward-thinking of all the people involved in prairie management at this time. He's bringing the animals in and trying to do it all at one time.
One of the most amazing things I've seen with having the prairie grasses is just the seasons, that the different things, the changes every season. There's always something blooming and something to look at. The amount of insects is also really neat. You know, you hear the birds. You just, anytime you come into it, there's always a life that you're going to see, some form, somehow.
It's so enjoyable. Even if we didn't do anything with it, it's worth it almost just to be able to, you know, in the afternoons we can ride through and look at the different plants.
It feels good knowing that we're driving a healthy soil, we're supporting a healthy ecosystem, and that we truly have a legacy that can continue and we can leave behind for the next generation.